Ahlan wa sahlan, welcome. In today's lesson, we are going to be going over a concept called اسم التفضيل. Oops, put the pen on, here we go. اسم التفضيل, which is superlatives. And they're also going to be comparatives. Okay, so we're talking about both of these. So let's look at some words that we have done so far for الدرس السابع. So in chapter 7, we were introduced to a word, أكبر. And a couple of chapters ago, we were introduced to a word, أحسن. Now I want you to look at these two words and notice what is the pattern. Okay, what is الوزن, the pattern that both of these words are following. Okay. When we look at these two words, this is the root of this word, and these three letters are the root of this word. The addition here is the alif hamza. The pattern that these words follow then, remember if we replace the root letters with fa, ayn, and lam, is going to be this. We have alif hamza in the beginning. The first letter has a sukoon, second letter has a fatha, and third letter we end on af'al. That is the pattern. And this is the pattern for ism al-tafdil, which is the superlative. Okay? And when we talk about the superlative, it just means the most of that adjective, right? So if we look at akbar, its adjective is kabir, which means big. The superlative, the ism al-tafdil, is akbar, which means biggest. And it can also mean bigger, okay? It can also mean bigger by using the same exact pattern, akbar, and we just add the word min. And now it means bigger than. We're comparing it to something. So if I look at this word, ahsan, it's the same thing. It means the best, or if I say ahsan min, better than. Okay. So let's talk about how we get to this pattern right here. I'm going to show you a couple of words. So we have kabir, and we have saghir. And we want to change this into ism al-tafdil. So this right here is as-sifa, this is the adjective. And we want to change it to ism al-tafdil, the superlative. Okay, so we want to change this from big to biggest or bigger. We want to change this from small to smallest or smaller. The way that we do that is we look at the word and we say, okay, al-jadar, ma huwa al-jadar? What is the root of that word? So if I look at kabir, the root of that word is the kaf, the ba, and the ra. This ya is simply an extra letter. Okay, it is that addition. Remember when we did that lesson, we talked about roots and al-jadar wal-wazn, and we said a lot of the times our long vowels like alif, waw, and ya, then they're in the middle of the word, they tend to be additions. Saghir is the same thing. So the root letters are sad, ghain, and ra. The ya is extra. So here you have the first, second, and third. First, second, and third root letter. So in order to put this into the pattern for ism al-tafdil, you have to put it into this pattern af'al, like we saw on the slide before, where this alif hamza is extra. So the fa, ayn, lam, those are represented by the three root letters. So the way that we're going to do this, we're going to start the word with alif hamza and put the fatha. And then for the fa, that's the first letter. And the first letter in this one is a kaf. And you put a sukoon on it because it has a sukoon here. The second root letter, we put a fatha on. So here we have the letter ba. And put a fatha. And then ra is our third root letter. And the word that we get is akbar. So now let's do the same thing for صغير. We start the word, anytime you have a اسم التفضيل, a superlative, always starts with ألف همزة, الفتحة. Then we have here the first letter, and it's going to have a sukoon because, look, the first letter has a sukoon in the pattern. Then we have the letter ghain. We're going to put a fatha because, remember, the second letter takes a fatha. And then the last letter, ra. Asghar, meaning smallest. So now let's do the same thing. I'll give you another one. What if we take qadim, which means old? Pause the video and write what you think the word for oldest is. So we have alif hamza. The ya here is extra, so here's the first root letter, the second root letter, and the third root letter. So the first root letter, we're going to put sukoon, fatha, mim. Qadim, aqdam. Okay, let's do another one. Barid. Barid meaning cold. So I want to say coldest. So here, in this adjective, we don't have a ya. What do we have that's extra? The alif. So the ba is your first root letter, the ra is your second, and the dal is your third. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start here with alif hamza, fatha. The ba is the first root letter. We're going to put a sukoon on it. Ra, the second root letter with a fatha. And dal, abrad, meaning coldest. Okay, now let's do another example. Sa'ab, meaning hard or difficult. And we want to say hardest, or the most difficult. So notice here, Sa'ab only has 3 letters. So that means those are the 3 root letters. Sad, Ain, Ba. So when we put that in the pattern, we're going to start again with the alif hamza. Sad, the first root letter with sukoon. Ain, second root letter with the fatha, and end it with ba. Ashab. Sa'ab, hard. Ashab, hardest. Let's do the same thing. Let's do another one. Tayyib, meaning good. Tayyib, we want to say the best, or the most delicious if you're talking about food. So here you have a ya that has a shadda. So we're going to take out one of those and we're just going to use ta, the letter ya, and the letter ba. Those are the root letters. So we're going to get alif hamza. Ta has a sukoon. Ya has a fatha. And ba, atyab. Atyab. Okay. Now, there are other examples, and there's a handout that I've shared with you guys that you can look at. There are examples of words that end in a long vowel. Okay? So, for instance, if we look at the word ali, meaning high. Remember we talked about in the chapter on weather, الرطوبة عالية, the temperature, the humidity is high. Ali. So here you have ayn, here you have an alif that's extra, you have a lam, and then the word has a ya at the end. Words that end like this with a long vowel at the end. We have other words like halu, which is sweet. These types of words, when you end with a long vowel, what you're going to do when you change it is you're going to end the word that's the version of the word that's ism al-tafdil, you're going to end it with alif maqsura. So that's the rule for that. So we're going to take alif hamza, then we have the ayn, and then we have our lam, and then instead of a ya at the end, we're going to just end it with alif maqsura. A'la. Remember, alif maqsura looks like a ya, but it doesn't have dots, and it's pronounced like an alif. So same thing here, we would say ahla, meaning sweetest. And then another pattern that we have is words that have two of the same letters. Okay, words that have two of the same letters. For instance, jadid. Jadid. If I was to look at the root, al-wazan, we would say, okay, we have jim, dal, and dal, because yeah, here is an extra. So 1, 2, 3. Those are 3 root letters. When you have a letter, the last 2 letters, when the last 2 letters are the same, what you're going to do is you're just going to put a shadda on that letter instead of repeat it twice. So we're going to put alif hamza, jim, and instead of saying ajdad, we're just going to say ajad. And we're going to put a shadda there. So jadid, new, ajad meaning newest, or ajad min, newer than. Okay. We would do the same thing, for instance, if I had the word qalil. Qalil meaning a little bit. So we want to say the least amount. So we're going to say alif hamza here, qaf, that's your first. Then we have a lam and a lam. There's 2 lams. So instead of writing 2 lams, we're just going to write 1 and put a shadda, aqal, which means fewer or fewest. Okay, the least amount. So that is what you do when you have 2 of the same letters. Now let's talk about how we can use ism tafdeel. Okay, how can we use them? So if I want to use it as a superlative, okay, so for instance, if I say huwa saghir, meaning he's small or he's young. If I say huwa asghar walad, he's the youngest boy. Huwa asghar walad fi as-saf, he's the youngest boy in the class. When you use that, we take the ism tafdeel, we take the superlative, and you just follow it with ism nakira, an indefinite noun. And this is the same thing that we were doing when we learned ahsan. Right? We did all these questions with ma huwa ahsan, ma hiya ahsan. Right? What is the best? Ma huwa ahsan saf fil jama'. What's the best class? Ma hiya ahsan sayyara. What's the best car? ما هو أحسن مطعم في مدينتنا. What's the best restaurant in our city? Right, so we took the word, and this word is the superlative, ism tafdeel, and then we follow it with ism nakira, an indefinite noun. An indefinite noun meaning it's not going to start with an alif lam. So notice here, walad does not start with alif lam. And that's how you use that superlative. Okay. So what if I wanted to use any of those words in a sentence? Okay. If I want to say, this is the tallest building. So we have هذه, because we're talking about building, and building is binaya, and binaya is feminine. هذه أطول بناية. Or you can say هذه هي if you want. If we did it as a question, we would say ما هي, what is أطول بناية, what's the tallest building في العالم, in the world. ما هي أطول بناية في العالم. So this is the same pattern that we learned when we did ahsan. That when you're asking a question about what is the best, what is the worst, what is the tallest, what is the biggest, what is so-and-so, we use ma, and then we use here huwa or hiya, depending on the word. So this right here is mu'annath, it's feminine. So we're going to use هي. If you want to ask about a person, remember we're going to use the word من. من هو أجمل رجل في العالم? Who's the most beautiful man in the world? So here, because we're asking about a person, we're using من. من هو. If it was a woman, من هي. Okay. So the superlative word doesn't change depending on gender. You just keep that the same. Now, if you want to use it as a comparative, you want to compare two things, then we're going to use it with min. Okay. So for instance, let's look at the sentence that we saw here. هو أصغر ولد. Let's change that. Let's use it in a comparative form. هو أصغر من whoever we want to talk about. من أختي. So he is younger than his sister. Remember, this is his. So if you want to use a comparison with the word than, we use the word min. So min, now you know, means from, and it also means than. Okay? So if I say, for instance, مطعم, okay, مطعم, pick a مطعم. مطعم حميدو's أحسن من مطعم, whichever مطعم. Okay, so if you want to compare two things, هذا المطعم, this restaurant, هذا المطعم أحسن من McDonald's مثلا. Okay, so better than. So this is better than. But if we said أحسن مطعم, then it would be the best restaurant. Okay, remembering that when you use it in the superlative form, the word after it doesn't take alif lam. Okay, so that is اسم تفضيل. That's basically how we're going to use اسم تفضيل. You can also take اسم تفضيل and you can add a pronoun to the end of it. Okay, so for instance, we can say عندي أختين. I have two sisters. عندي أختين أو لي أختين. وأنا, and I want to say I'm the oldest of them. وأنا, so we say أكبر, and then we just say هم, أكبرهم, meaning I'm the oldest of them. Okay, oldest of them. So if you want to add a pronoun to the end, oldest of them, youngest of them, tallest of them, you can do that. Okay, so that is اسم تفضيل. So what you're going to do now is there is a handout, and in that handout I have a list of words, and you're changing it so that it fits that أفعل pattern. So remember that the pattern for اسم تفضيل is أفعل. So you're going to get the adjective just like you did here. You'll get the adjective and you're going to change it so that it fits that pattern of اسم تفضيل.